government's decision not to reopen international borders until mid-next year has been the last straw for many migrants who say they can't wait that long to see family overseas. Many have either already left Australia for good or are considering leaving, dealing another blow to an economy crying out for skilled workers.
For Wendy Gutteridge, Fortress Australia became her prison.
I really felt quite isolated. It was pretty difficult.
The 45-year-old moved to Melbourne in 2015 with the intention of staying long-term until closed international borders made it impossible to visit her widower mum in England, forcing the now Australian citizen to give up on her dream down under.
At the time I came back at the end of January. The UK had over 70,000 new cases every day, over 1,000 deaths every day, which just shows how strong the pull is to see your family.
Brittany Lee also struggled with the separation from her family in the US after moving to Perth with her Australian husband 5 years ago.
It hasn't been good at all, honestly. This last year has probably been one of the hardest on my mental health. Not knowing when I would see them.
She works in the disability sector and her husband Mark is a diesel engineer in the mines. Within 2 weeks, the couple planned to move to California permanently, blaming Australia's strict conditions on arrivals and departures.
I see this as very long term, especially after this last year and seeing, how Australia has handled the border restrictions.
For Annalise and Daniel Cavan, not being able to see family in Canada after having their first child last year has weighed heavily.
At times it's been verging on impossible.
The couple on the Gold Coast is now also considering saying goodbye to their lives and successful careers here.
The borders aren't going to be open at least until mid-2022. I feel like we can't wait that long.
Since March last year, more than 150,000 Australian citizens and permanent residents were given exemptions to leave the country. In April alone, there were more than 65,000 departures from Australia, the highest figure since the pandemic began. Among those leaving are long-term skilled migrants, which economists say the country can't afford to lose.
If they have a valuable skill and we can't replenish it easily, either through migration or through training that can take some time, that's a skill that we won't have in the Australian economy for a period.
For now, getting the 40,000 Australians still stranded overseas back home is the government's priority, but pressure is growing on Canberra to take into account the almost 50% of all Australians either born overseas or with parents born abroad.
Family reunion is going to have to be a priority, particularly in circumstances where there are vulnerabilities within a family or care obligations.
A petition with more than 70,000 signatures will be presented to federal parliament in a fortnight, calling on the government to allow exemptions for parents to enter Australia.
15 months into a global pandemic with no end in sight, it's really urgent that the government review all of its border control.
There's just been no recognition for people who are desperate to see their families, and they keep putting the dates back and back and back,
forcing migrants to leave the migrant nation. Catalina Flores, SBS World News.
Large swathes of an historic wetland system